How are you?
I am very well, thank you, sir. I'm doing good. It's a beautiful, sunny, slightly cold day here in New York, and yeah, seasons change. That's for
I
sure.
can imagine. Yes, it's strangely a bit warmer today. Maybe it's just my body temperature, but it's quite warmer than it used to be, in Lincoln. So we are fine.
Well, look, here we go again, round two. So
Yes.
let me welcome you. So welcome to In Conversation. It is a pleasure to have you here again today, and thank you again for your time. For anyone tuning in, this is a rescheduled In Conversation, which we tried to host last week. And to be fair, we did host a lot of it, but we were beset by quite a few technical issues. So as the conversation was so interesting, we thought we would redo it, and we've rescheduled for today. So welcome everybody in the audience. Thanks for joining us. And I would just like to welcome today's guest, Dr. Ola Ogunyemi. It's a pleasure to have you here. Ola's works with Intellect on one of our journals, but also does a lot more than that. So you're calling in from Lincoln, so maybe we should start there. So you're based in Lincoln, but you are originally from Africa, right?
From Nigeria.
From Nigeria. So it'd be good to hear a little bit about your upbringing in Nigeria. Maybe start there, but and I want to hear a little bit about what you're up to. Well, let's start with what you do at the University of Lincoln. A little bit about your position and what it entails.
Well, I've been working at the University of Lincoln for the past 20 years. Going to be 20 years in February next year, which seems like a long time, but actually time flies. And the most important is I work in the Department of Journalism, because I'm a trained journalist. Father was one of the first generation of Nigerian journalists in the 80s to be able to report as well as take pictures. It wasn't very common in those days to be multi-skilled. You have to follow one line, either radio, TV, or photojournalism, or straight, writing, print. But I was just bored with just doing one item, to be candid. So I know quite a lot about print journalism by that point. So I said, let me take an extra, something like that module. And I did photojournalism. So, and when I went to do a stint with The Guardian in 1989, I could remember the face of the editor when I went into the newsroom. And I said, well, I've just arrived from Moscow, and I have 3 months to spare. Can I stay in your newsroom and do something? And he was looking at it and said, oh, I'm so sorry. Look at the newsroom. It was so full of people. He said, oh, students, everybody's here. You didn't write us. We don't have space. And I said, okay, what about your photo department? And he said, what about it? So I brought out my camera and I looked at it and said, can you take pictures? I said, yes, I'm a trained photographer. Then what are you standing here for? Go to the So he quickly ushered me to the photo editor. And it was quite an interesting occasion because I spent all my time there, and taking pictures in Nigeria is quite different from taking pictures in Moscow, to be candid, in Europe. Because, of course, the way you expose, the kind of camera you use in those days, you still have to take them to the dark room to be able to remove you or something. So it was quite a challenge, but it was quite interesting to learn quickly. I remember after about 2 assignments, when you come out of the dark room, all the other journalists are photojournalists are waiting, looking at as you bring out your photo reel, like that, negatives. They'll be looking at it. If it's not shining and very transparent, they will say, it's too murky. So, of course, my first 2 wasn't quite transparent. But when I came out with the 3rd one, everybody was clapping. It's as if they were waiting outside the dark room for me to come out. So when I came out with it straight, they look at me, wow, they said, wonderful, this is good. So fast forward, of course, when you have a PhD in journalism, you are over qualified to work as a journalist. So you are told. So that's why I veered into teaching, and, I started my teaching career. Well, I did my postdoc at London School of Economics. Then after that, I went to Edge University now. It used to be Edge University College, to set up their first journalism program for them. So I was there 4 years. And then when I thought I was comfortable and enjoying myself, then the opportunity came at Lincoln. So I said, oh, well, it was as if they were describing me. So I said, let me just apply for fund. And that fund is now 20 years fund, isn't it? So I teach here, and I started looking into my research portfolio, so it's not just about teaching, it's about teaching and research. So, and then I veered into what we now call diaspora journalism. Because as I was saying last week, I wanted to do something that has resonance to my audience in Europe, basically. So I didn't want to do African studies, because many people, the first time when I go to conference, they look at me and say, oh, are you doing African studies? I say, no. I know many people do that, but to me, I feel that you lose the nuance, the cultural and political nuance, by being far away. I've not lived in Nigeria for 35 years. All the names that I see in the newspapers these days, they weren't the names that I was familiar with when I was in Nigeria, So how could you now be doing, a sort of a real study of those people when you don't live among them? At least that's my own take. So that's why I said, look, I have to do something different. And then I started looking into the African diaspora in the UK. And I remember I went to a conference when I started it. That was early, 2000. And then one of my colleagues looked at me and said, what's your research into? I said, African diaspora and their media. I said, why? I said, because nobody's studying them. Yeah. He said, that's an academic suicide. So I said, well, we'll see. But now I've become an authority on the subject. So because no one wanted to do it. So I did it.
You don't have to outrun the shark, just all those around you. So you've become one of the premier minds, of course, of the diaspora studies. So there you go.
Exactly. You need to distinguish yourself, to be candid, in a different way. And I don't like following the crowd all the time, to be candid. So it's been a struggle, to be candid, because my first 3 publications were not done in the UK. They were done in the US, and, so US actually recognized my work quicker than UK, academics. So it was when I started getting known in the US that the UK academics said, okay, write us one paper there or do this with us. So yeah. And then of course I went into book publishing, edited books and this and that. And from day one, because from 2010, I launched the Media of Diaspora Research Group in Lincoln. And my head of department then was very supportive. So we launched that, and then we decided at that point that we're going to have a journal. Okay. And at that point in time, it was just like a statement of belief that, okay, we're going to have a journal. It was like something that's going to happen in future. And, nobody thought about it until 2017. I went to a conference, MEXA conference in in Leeds. And one of the editors of a journal with Intellect, he just came and tapped me from behind and said, Ola, do you know people are reading you now? I said, okay, you should start a journal. And I said, really? I said, and that reminded me of the one thing we put out in 2010, that we're going to have a journal, but I didn't think it's going to happen anymore. So then I said, okay, how do you go about it? He said, go and talk to Intellect. And that was how it started. Yeah. So we have a journal now.
Before we get into the journal, let's just backtrack a little bit. So, you started from a practice-based background. It seems you were an actual journalist, and then, as you said, you did your PhD. You felt maybe you were too qualified to work as a journalist, and you were to the UK, and you'd studied at that point. How important do you think that is for someone who studies or teaches journalism and communication studies, that they've had a practical background within the subject, that they've worked in journalism or in the media, social media, or whatever it might be nowadays? Do you think that's an important component to be a successful, communication studies, journalism studies sort of teacher, researcher?
That's a very good question. I think personally, it's very important, but not many people have got the opportunity to do it. To the point, because I've got some colleagues who've never practiced before. They just went through and then they say, "Oh, I'm a media scholar," and something like that. But if you are passionate about journalism. See, it's a difference to study. I think we have to differentiate it. You know, when you did media studies, it's different from doing journalism. You see, I actually did journalism. It's different. So, and that means that you are passionate about, you know, an aspect of journalism, which could be, in those days, could be print or broadcast or photojournalism, whatever. So, and doing it is actually part of what makes you a journalist. So to be able to be in the field and then come back into academia is the point. Because as I said to me, I never thought I would be an academic. I just thought I would just go be a practitioner, to be candid, you know, until and when I got my scholarship to go and study at Moscow State University, it was up to a master's level. It was not up to PhD. So, but when I finished my department, you know, at the Department of Journalism, they recommended me for a PhD. You know, and then they were asking me to say I should consider it serious. I was thinking, why would anybody want to do PhD in journalism? Just go and practice. So they said, yeah, you know, you are one of our best students. You know, we just want you to do it. And when I finished my PhD in 1995, I happened to be the second Nigerian to do a PhD at Moscow State University in journalism. The last person that did it in the 70s, early 70s, and they never had another one. So it was quite something for them. Say, yeah, we had another one. So yeah, so I accepted the offer because again they gave me the department's scholarship to do it, so I didn't have to pay anything. I said, okay, well, if it's to study, I enjoy studying, so let's do it. So that's where I am now.
I wanted to just ask you a little bit about that as well, because that's fascinating. I mean, you've worked and studied across the globe, but in some really interesting places. Sort of, you know, migrating from Africa and then studying at Moscow State University in what, 95 you graduated, I believe. So, you know, in the 90s, and then obviously coming to the UK. But your work obviously is well known across the United States and in the world for sure. But just give us a few anecdotes or tell us a little bit about your time at Moscow State University, especially in the 90s. Did that feel strange to you? Did that have a big impact on the way that you teach or the way that you perceive research within subjects? Because as you say, you were only the second Nigerian to have in such subjects as well. So how was that?
Yeah, actually, I got to Moscow in 1986. Okay. So I spent 9 years in Russia, you see. And I remember when I first, it was a shock to me, to be candid, for my scholarship to direct me to Soviet Union. Because to be candid, you know, being a young person growing up in Nigeria, your dream was to go to the UK or US or Canada. And when I got this scholarship offer, and it says Soviet Union, so initial thing was for me to sit back and feel, do I really want to go to Soviet Union? You know, but I remember somebody, you know, came to me and said to me, that was one of my senior colleagues in Nigeria. I wasn't a practicing journalist then, although I was writing in the National Daily Times, because I had already done a diploma in mass communication, so I knew I would enjoy doing. So, and the person came to me and said, look, it's a challenge. I think you will rise up to it. So I took it up. I didn't know a single word of Russian when I was going, so that was also a problem. I said, how am I going to cope? So, of course, getting to Russia, you know, I had to apply myself quickly because I don't like being behind. You know, some of the people who came with me from Nigeria, some of them have been actually applying for 2-3 times, you know, and I only applied one time and got it, you know. So they've been learning, and they've become what they call a fellowship of Russian, you know, students or something like that. So we've been learning Russian before going to Soviet Union. So I just said, no, I don't want them to beat me in this game. So I quickly applied myself and did it. So it was quite interesting that when you got there, you would think, okay, one funny thing about it is because you now begin to be aware of your identity. Okay? When I was in Nigeria, it never occurred to me that I feel different. And this is linking back to Black History Month now. I didn't feel different because I was living among Black people myself. So it didn't feel strange. But when I got to Moscow, then you begin to realize that you are actually different. You see. And one anecdote I will tell you about is that, you know, the whole population of Black people in Moscow at that time, you know, towards the 1990, you know, was 2,000. Okay, so and you hardly see each other because, you know, many of them there are many universities in Moscow where you know Black people go to, especially the Friendship University. There's one where there are very many of them. So to come to Moscow State University is actually like going to Cambridge. So it's quite unique. Only very few foreigners actually get into Moscow State. So I hardly come in contact with Black people. See, so there was one time, you know, entered a bus, and then, you know, these pending buses, you know, was very common in those days, very long one, you know, they are very common in the UK now too, in London. And if you are at the end of the pending bus, the one end of it, and you look towards the driver's side, which is like 2 coaches away from you, and you see another Black person, you will be waving and jumping to catch the person's attention. And then when they get down, you get down. Just no, that's not your stop. Or you get down purposely to be acquainted with them. So you say, "How are you?" That was something. Then you exchange phone. You know, not there was no phone there. Exchange addresses and things like that, and then you go and visit each other. Now, with that mindset, you know, spending about 3 years in Russia, I went on a visit to London, and I was at Trafalgar Square, you know. And I remember this incident very well. I was walking down the street, and there's this Black person coming towards me. And I started beaming and smiling and also towards him. And he just walked past me, was looking, what's wrong with this person? You know, and I was shocked too. Say, what's wrong with him? You know, in my mind, he didn't want to acknowledge me. So as fate will have it, we were going around the land and we met each other again. So he looked at me and said, "Mr. Man, you don't live here, do you?" I said, "No." He said, "No wonder." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "We don't just greet each other like, do I know you?" He said, "You know, there are many Black people in London, so you just go about." I said, "Well, in Moscow, there are very few of us, you know." So when you see one Black person, it's like, oh God, the whole of the community is here now. Yeah. So that's it.
So it sounds like that stint in Moscow definitely had quite a big impact on you, and then obviously you needed to make a few adaptations when you moved to the UK as well. Before we get into, I mean, I know we'll get into the journal, but we're past Black History Month now because it was in October, but we invited you on to be part of In Conversation as the 4th guest in our celebration of Black History Month. And I know there's a few things you want to speak to and speak about, such as Black History Month and communication studies and diaspora studies more generally, which we'll certainly get into in a minute. But I thought this might be a good opportunity to talk about diaspora studies more generally, obviously something you're an expert in. You've already mentioned that you started thinking about forming a journal back in 2010, which has now become the Journal of Diaspora Studies, you know, with Intellect. So I just wanted to ask you a little bit about how things have changed in that time, especially in terms of diaspora studies, and just tell us a little bit about how the journal came about, and then we can talk a little bit about what the journal focuses on, you know, what the aims and scopes are and things of that nature.
Yeah, when I started looking into the diaspora studies, you know, many people, they study it from a historical perspective, but not from a journalistic perspective. So I said I wanted it to be a subsection of journalism studies. Because when you look at journalism studies, they use mainstream media and, okay, minority media to some extent as, you know, object of empirical study. But they don't use diaspora or diasporic media. Okay. So I started making that argument, you know, and then over a period of time, it took maybe 5 to 6 years. And then it became kind of, everybody now say, okay, diaspora media is available and accessible to many more people, and they need to talk about it. So I was getting called to conferences and say, "Oh, come and give us the point on this diaspora from the African point of view." So now, of course, there is more awareness now. We have more students who are now doing PhD in, you know, diaspora journalism, you know, and then I remember, you know, there was, I think 2014 thereabout, you know, somebody, I just we got into my office and somebody called, and I picked the phone, and it was a student I didn't know. Before he's called from another university, he said, "Oh, he's just gone to do his PhD Viva, and he has written a whole PhD on Zimbabwean diaspora in the UK." And he was referred, he was failed on the basis that he did not cite me. So, and he said he never heard of my work. I said, that's interesting. So to me, it was a shock too that, somebody thinks that they have to cite me before they can finish their PhD. So, and I said, who was the chair of your Viva? And that was somebody actually who came to the launch of my, Media of Diaspora Research Group in 2010. So, so I said, so no wonder. So it shows that, okay, there is a lot of awareness now.
Yeah. I mean, sorry to interject, but well, you've just mentioned as well the Media Diaspora Research Group, which I know you're a founding member of. Maybe tell us a little bit about that as well, and the work that you do with that organisation, because I believe that's kind of definitely where the journal came from as well. So do tell us a bit more about that work as well, please.
Exactly, because that group was formed just to raise awareness about diaspora journalism. Is the point. So from that I said, we wanted to differentiate it from the historical aspect of it, because there are some universities maybe about a handful of universities in the US, but just maybe 2 or 3 universities in the UK here who are doing diaspora studies. As a course, they offer it as one of the programs. Okay. But what they don't do is actually diaspora journalism. So, and the idea of the media of diaspora, that's why we call it media of diaspora, so that we know that we are talking about the journalistic aspect of it. How do people in the diaspora actually communicate, amongst themselves and communicate with other groups? See the point. You see, when you then look at the Black History Month, I wanted to bring it back to the Black History Month debate. You see, it's quite interesting, because when I talk to my students about Black History Month, I said, the first question I ask them is this, because 99% of my students are white. Okay, I only teach mostly white students. So I said to them, I said, when is White History Month? And they look at me and someone said, there's no White History Month. I said, okay, fine. I said, when is Black History Month? All of them know it's October. I said, why do we have Black History Month? Why not White History Month as well? I said, what we should be moving into is to make sure that we normalize, racial, equality. In fact, there's no reason for it to be Black History Month if people are actually conscious or for that reason. You see, going to Russia, and then if I put an analogy, actually raise my cultural awareness and my identity, because I realized when I got to Russia that I didn't know enough about my own culture.
Interesting.
Okay? Because I was being taught in Nigeria about British culture, not Nigerian culture. So I knew more about British culture than my culture. And I got to Russia, and after learning the language, after 1 year, language course, my language tutor said, tell us about yourself and your culture. I was in my mid-20s. I knew nothing. I'm telling you, I was shocked. So I had to write home and tell them, look, why do we do this? Why do we, because there are different aspects of culture. You have the material aspect of culture, which is, the dress, the way they dress, the utensils that you use, and all that, artifacts like that. I don't use them. I don't dress in a Nigerian way. When I was in Nigeria, I wear a suit in that heat, put in a 3-piece suit with a tie. Anytime I travel to Nigeria, I see people wearing it, I say, I just hold my head in my hand. I say, how can they, actually kind of feel comfortable in that kind of, attire? So then there is the philosophical aspect of culture, okay? That's talking about religion. See the point? I know nothing about African religion when I was in Africa. Then you have the institutional aspect of culture. The institutional aspect of culture is to do with, okay, how are traditional, institutions, like the institution of kingship. We have many kings how did they sustain the community and things like that. And that was why I actually did my PhD on indigenous communication systems and how that, reflects on, how the community engagement between the old system, which is the kingship system, and the modern democratic system.
Right.
Super. Then there's the creative aspect of culture, looking at, sculptures and artwork and system. I knew nothing about any of these things. Super. So going to Russia actually, awoken me to my own identity. So, and by knowing your own identity, you can now begin to negotiate your identity with other people. So if I go back to Russia now on a visit, I can negotiate my identity and begin to relate to them in such a way that, yeah, they will still see me different, but different in an acceptable way. You see the point? So that what is happening in most cases is that there is no cross-cultural, conversation.
Right.
You see? So Black History Month actually gives us the space to tell our own story, which is quite fantastic. We are telling, but who are we telling this story to? See the point? So we have to go beyond just, okay, I'll meet another Black person and then we shout and say, oh, we don't like how the other racial group are treating us. Okay, but you are not having communication with the other group, So we need to be able to open up that space. So that's what Media of Diaspora is about, to be able to look at that communication system in place to enable that conversation to take place.
I think that's an important point you've just raised there. And before we move on to discuss the journal in more depth, maybe I can pick that apart a little bit. And it'd be really interesting to hear your thoughts on Black History Month as a concept beyond what you've already said. What are its major shortcomings, and how do you see the future for events and for celebratory months such as Black History Month? And obviously there are things that are peripheral as well, like like Pride is celebrating LGBTQ plus, and various other things, Indigenous months, all these different things. So I don't know if you feel comfortable speaking about those as well, but how can we negotiate? How can we improve them, and how can we ensure that they have greater impact, both for the individuals and the communities that they're discussing and celebrate, but then also, how we can make impact and change on maybe the former colonial powers? Because I was thinking one of the things about, say, Black History Month, which has been really interesting to me and something that I've seen, is a lot of white people engaging with the content to try to relearn an alternative history of their own colonial past. Because, of course, the big shortcoming for education, especially for people maybe of my age, late 30s and the generation before, and I'm sure the current generation as well, we had a very limited access to education in terms of history. It was all World War I, World War II, obviously the Roman Empire, the Greek Empire, and then, of course, our own empire. But the narrative was told in a very, prejudiced way. So the empire was great, we left everyone infrastructure, etc., etc. So I found that these months, and a lot of people have commented on this as well through social media and things, is there've been a really good opportunity for people to engage with their own alternative history. So as a white British person, it's a good opportunity to go back and be like, well, hang on a minute, I don't, and why do we have those statues? Who is that person? Who is this person? Oh, they were a slave master, or they were a sugar importer. Why do they get a statue? Who paid for it? It makes you critique and question a lot of received knowledge and just the history that you've been taught. I think some of these months, they make you look for alternative perspectives and opinions. Anyway, that's just my 10 cents on it. But how do you feel about that? And do you think that we can make some effective changes?
Look, as somebody who's international in scope, is the point. I can say to you that, the first thing we have to ask ourselves is that since Black History Month started in the UK and in America, what difference has it made? Simple. What difference? That is an important question to ask, because talk is cheap. Okay? It's just like this climate change debate as well. Mm. They talk. It's simple. Now, but what is the change that we are expecting? What I want to do, I don't subscribe to having a particular month. There's no point in having Black History Month, or any other month for that matter. Let us celebrate humanity. Okay? We need to recognize that we all belong to the same human race. there is no different races. People, it's a confusion to say we have many races. No, we have many colors, but one race. You see what I mean? So that's what we're supposed to do first. Once we recognize that, then we begin to now treat each other properly. Now, we also need to promote what we call contact theory. Okay, that contact theory means that the more you actually move closer to other people, the more you know about them. I do this exercise with my students in the class. I will say to them, I said, okay, bring out your phone. They will bring out their phone. I'll say, how many contacts have you got on your phone? One time somebody had got like 400 contacts on their phone. I said, okay, now break them down into their race, as you say, race. Right. How many are white? How many are black? How many are of other? And they break them down. And then they begin to realize that 85%, sometimes 90% belong to people who look like them. Right. So that's where the problem is. Human beings gravitate towards people who look like them. There's nothing wrong in that. But we need to consciously also not, kind of, marginalize people who don't look like us. Yeah. So that's where being a humanistic comes in and say, okay, if I have the opportunity to meet someone else who doesn't, take an interest in them. Some people will sit down, they will meet at an event. They will not talk to one another and say, why? They say they are not introduced. Does anybody need to introduce you? Just say hi. Just say hi to the person. Just recognize their humanity. You see, we have something in my culture, Yoruba culture. You see, there are 250 ethnic groups in Nigeria. So I'm not talking for all of them. So I'm talking about Yoruba culture. You see, as I'm talking to you now, if somebody comes by, and within our vision, I must stop to say hello to that person. Okay? Why? I'm recognizing the person as a human being. I don't need to continue this discussion. I just have to say, oh, James, just a minute. Hello, Paul. How are you today? You are okay? Oh, sorry. I'm talking to James. I continue my conversation. You see? Whereas in Western culture, you are supposed to face, as I'm talking to James, I just continue talking to James. You see what? So this person may be hanging around, but because I'm still talking to James, I don't have to show recognition.
Indeed, yeah, that's true. That's true. I have noticed that. That's true.
You see, that's where the problem is. You see what? We need to have 360 degrees vision.
An interesting and quite don't take this the wrong way, simple way of looking at things, but a very effective way of looking at things, I think. Do you think in conjunction with what you've just said, do you think we're too busy trying to celebrate difference and locate ethnicity and celebrate different ethnicities and different cultures, when in actuality, from your perspective, we should be celebrating the core elements that are the same across cultures, ethnicities, what we might term races, our shared humanity? Should be focused much, it sounds like you would have us focusing much more on shared humanity rather than celebrating things that have been marginalized. I feel like, and at the moment, there's obviously definitely two maybe trains of thought on this, one which I think you're representing, and another which perhaps is like, well, hang on a minute, we need to make sure that we highlight this festival, this religion, this part of that ethnic culture, this part of that, because they've been marginalized and we haven't celebrated diversity within our cultures, especially if it be US, UK, and former colonial European powers, etc. So I think that's a very powerful idea that you're putting across there, and one that maybe people are perhaps scared to highlight, with the current zeitgeist that's taking place.
You have a point. I believe in our shared humanity.
Yeah.
When you focus on that, all other things will fall into place. To the point. But by cherry picking, it doesn't help.
Interesting.
Because what you end up doing is also, because someone else may say, okay, you pick that one out. It's just like having a salad bowl. Okay, let's do a salad bowl. Okay, now in a salad bowl, I don't know how you eat your salad, but people have different mixes in there. They say, okay, I like mine with sweet corn. on it. So lettuce, I have tomato and egg. Sometimes it's not here and there. I don't like beans on it. Some people like baked beans on it. You know what I'm saying? So, but
help me up.
Exactly. Then you put pepper into it, something. So now that salad bowl is called salad for a reason.
Right.
Now, can you imagine that you now pick out say for instance, onion. You pick out onion, and then you begin to celebrate onion.
Yeah.
What do you think? Sweet corn will be thinking about. You need to bring me out and celebrate me as well.
True.
So by the time you bring everybody out, there's no salad.
That's a very interesting analogy, and something that I think maybe we should all definitely hold closer to our hearts at the moment. That's a really interesting way of putting it. It turns out that you're a good communicator, because these analogies and metaphors are really good ways of describing quite complicated human interactions. So I can see
I'm a teacher, you should know. So I like to speak with illustrations and things like that.
I just want to interject very quickly. We've got a few, we're getting a few interesting comments from the audience. I just want to say, if anyone has any specific questions, especially for Ola, then just drop them into the comments section and we will try to answer them in our last sort of 20 minutes as we continue with this conversation. From there, let's jump into a couple of other things then. Let's talk a little bit more about the journal. Tell us what the aims and scopes of the journal kind of are, broadly speaking, and and just tell us a bit about what the journal's about, and what people can expect if they go online to intellectbooks.com and download a free copy, which they can do, and then let's talk a little bit about maybe some of the issues that you have coming up and what people could do to submit their own work perhaps to the journal. It'd be good to hear a bit about that.
Yeah, this is the Journal of Global Diaspora and Media. Now that name is quite interesting, because when I said to you that when this gentleman tapped me in the back and said you should set up a journal, then it became what's going to be the name of the journal? Because people were around us at the conference and they took an interest. They said, "Oh, you want to start a journal?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "What's the name?" I said, "Well, they know me as a diaspora, person." I said, "So what's going to be the name?" And everybody was, suggesting this, and I said, "No, not that one. Oh, no, this one." I said, "Okay, don't worry." I said, "The name will come." So overnight, as I was waking up the following morning, this name just came to my mind: Global Diaspora and Media.
It's neat.
I said, "Okay, I'm going to try it out on them." So I went to the conference and I called the group together. I said, "What do you think about this?" And they said, "That's it. That is the name." So it's like, and it's getting, feedback about that name will resonate very well. So getting the name right is also important. The journal, provides a home for people who are marginalized from mainstream journals. Okay, because I know my struggles in the 90s. I told you that my first 3 publications, if you look at my CV, my very first 3 publications were done in the US. So I could not get into the mainstream journals in the UK because they treat it like it's an exotic area. And if they publish one article in it this year, they might say to you next year, say, "Oh, sorry, we recently published on it, so we don't have space for that." So that's not what you want. You want more, because there's a lot to tell. There's a lot of story going on. So I said, look, I need to, for those who are coming behind, those now that more people are now doing diaspora study in the West and in the global North and the global South, we need to encourage them. Otherwise, they will see there's no point in it. So, and since the journal started, actually, I was quite surprised. We're inundated with articles. I have enough articles for the next 2 years as I'm sitting up, which is I mean, it's a comfortable position to sit in, to say, "Oh, I don't have to worry for the next 2 years to have." You see, so it's great and it's building up. So and it will continue to highlight certain things. Like the special issue we had this year was on Somali diaspora. I'm very apt, because it came in around the time of, we're discussing more about, the Black history and also things like that. And many people will say, "Oh, the Somali diaspora, what did they do?" See the point? But their communication practices and also things like that. So everything is premised on communication. How do these people communicate? You know, what devices do they use? You know, and then, you know, are they also using, if you are looking at their journalists, are they using journalistic practices that are standard and common and things like that? How are they negotiating some of these practices and things like that? Some of my work, I've looked into that as well. So a whole range of issues, you know, to unpick there, and looking at their content, production, and audiences and things like that. So all of these things, they fit in together, looking at how we're going to make a better world. Because it's part of the whole contribution to literature and to knowledge. You know, otherwise, you know, we'll be missing a big aspect of what makes people tick. You know, and many of these people in diaspora, you know, they want, like, you know, when you look at mainstream TV, people feel, especially the minority group, they feel that they don't see people who look like them a lot on mainstream TV. So, and some of them are gravitating to, you know, the media for them because they see them. And it's important for your identity. You know, how can you aspire to become a president? Look at what Obama did for Black people in America. For the first time during his reign, they did, oh, it's something I can aspire to become. It's the fun. But if they never saw anybody being a president who looks like them, so if somebody say, go and be a president, oh, no, don't worry, let me just stay as a civil servant. So it's about that, you know, bringing that kind of something to the people that you can dream and dream big, and you have something to contribute. And that's what the journal is all about, celebrating that kind of, you know, diversity that is available in academia. Because again, you know, bringing in voices, you know, into academia, we have been, you know, in the UK now, we are talking about decolonizing the curriculum. You know, although the word decolonize is something that we also context, we want to make it as diversification, for instance. You know, so bringing new voices into the classroom and helping students to have a global perspective. Because again, when you teach people in a particular, you are positioning them. Yeah. To the point. So, and that's why it becomes difficult for them to see the other area, because they don't see 360 degrees. You've given them just a very kind of narrow view. So we need to open up the discussion and bringing in voices, you know, that are less known into the debate, you know, and using it to make knowledge to advance.
I mean, I completely agree with you. I mean, that you've spoken broadly there about academia and what academia is and should be trying to achieve, to, you know, to enable diverse voices and, you know, people from the African diaspora, for example. Is there anything that you feel publishers, academic publishers, should be doing specifically, or just, you know, continuing to try to, you know, provide a space for diverse voices, to, you know, to increase the democratization of knowledge globally, and, you know, not only in terms of people's access, but in terms of, you know, who is presenting the content as well?
I think Intellect is doing very well, to be candid. I cannot appreciate Intellect enough for being a visionary, because, you know, I remember when it didn't take us too long to actually launch the journal. And I remember, you know, immediately the journal was launched, one of my, you know, editorial board members said to me that they've been talking to a mainstream, you know, publisher before me, mm-hmm. on setting up a similar, you know, journal, and they got nowhere. So when mine was launched, they said, "Please, can we join you and be part of that?" I said, "Of course, you know, come and join me." See, so yes, I think there is a general awareness now, because even the mainstream, you know, publishers are now beginning to realize that they are missing a trick of them, because they are all thinking in terms of, okay, the commercial interest. Exactly, yes. So, and they might say, oh, well, it's a narrow scope, you know. They said that to me several times. So, yeah, how many people are here? You know, so, but now, because now knowledge is much more, you know, accessible, and thank God to the internet. It's the point. So, and to ebooks. technology and things. So you don't need to actually say, oh, I have to buy, how many copies. Just subscribe to the ebook. Wherever you are, you can read it, and then everybody can, it's not like, oh, I have to book it before I can take it out of the library. So that is going to be improving, and I think, Intellect and the likes, should be promoting more, reaching out to academics, who are doing this kind of marginalized topics, put it that way, and encouraging them. And another thing is also to check reviewers who are going to be reviewing those things, because the problem we have is that most of our work is being reviewed by people who know next to nothing about diaspora. Okay, so, and they'll be putting questions. When I get review back for some of my publications, they'll be asking some obvious questions from me, and I think, explain this, or why is this like that, or why. And I was thinking, to me, it was so obvious. You don't need to explain it to them, yeah. But because they are, so I said, okay, fine, get back to the granular level and then begin to. So we need to have more people who know the subject to be called upon to review, So that's the job that, publishers should be able to do, to make sure that they connect those two things together and encourage people to publish more in that area.
Some excellent points, and thank you for your complimentary words about Intellect as well. We certainly have tried to have the diversification of knowledge and access, increasing access and democratization of knowledge is key to who we are as a publisher, and something that we have always felt is vitally important. And I think it's very important that mainstream publishers do get on board with the changing narrative, but also just kind of gaslighting, and that it is something that is going to become at the core of what they do, and this isn't just while it's trendy, while it's popular, it's something that gets investment. This is something that we need to invest in, for the future, for sure. Speaking of the future, any exciting issues coming up for the journal? Any special themed issues or any topics that you would like to maybe see people submit research into? Anything that you would like, to hear more about?
Well, there's a lot. It's quite interesting if you look at the geographical spread of where research is being done. I don't think we have enough from Africa. And I've been trying to, because I'm also a professor at the university in Nigeria. And I've been trying to encourage people and say, look, we've had Lebanese in Nigeria since 1960s or before then. You see, who studied them?
Right.
You see, they are diaspora. You can say that many of them are naturalized Nigerians now, but they are still, Lebanese diaspora. Right. Who has studied them? So they are living among you, and you don't see them as diaspora. They are. What about South Africa? A lot of Zimbabweans are there, right, and a lot of Nigerians are there. Who is studying them? So we need from that African continent, a lot to be coming out. More is coming out from Latin America now, from North America, things like that. That's great. But, Asia and, Africa, we need more to come from that.
Well, for you then, what's the state of, I suppose, diaspora and journalism studies? Do you think it's in a healthy place, or do you think there's a lot of scope for growth, and for the subject to be further developed and I guess reinterpreted?
Yeah, there is a scope for it to grow, because as I said to you in the mid-90s, I predicted that is going to happen. It's the point, and it has happened. And because technology is becoming more affordable, we will have more and more of that coming up. And they are using social networks as well. Look at WhatsApp. WhatsApp has become like another medium.
Indeed, yeah.
It's very exactly. So people can also study through WhatsApp.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's actually this, if you want to call it social media or technological platform, one that I use the most, more than Instagram, Facebook, or the other platforms. And I think in terms of global communication, WhatsApp and other companies who have produced those kind of platforms, you know, it's kind of revolutionizing communication and how we're sharing content as well.
Exactly, because human beings, you know, actually communicate. That's what makes them human beings. So wherever they are, they want to say something, they want to discuss, and that's the more reason why, you know, this thing will continue to grow. Whether it's going to be economically viable is another question, to be candid, because with you know, what we call fragmentation of the audience, it can be very problematic. What you'll find now, that I was talking to the editor of Africa Today, it's a magazine in the UK here, some time ago for my research, and he said, oh, easily they should be printing 5,000 copies or more in the UK, but many African diasporas are not buying the magazine. You know, why? Because many of them are using it as a supplementary rather than a replacement. So they still go to the mainstream and then say, oh, by the way, okay, what's happening here? And they don't want to pay. They want to pay the growing rate for it. So that's one aspect of it. Then, of course, I think the media for the diaspora too, they need to be much more savvy about, you know, how much they want to how they price their work. I'll give you one example. There was a time when, you know, B-Sky B, that's the satellite network, when it was, you know, well, it started in the 1990s in the UK, very well. There was a time that one channel, it was a movie channel, was introduced for the Nigerians.
Oh, Nollywood.
That way. But no, it wasn't called Nollywood at that time. There was another name that came up, and then they brought that channel in, and they started as a free channel, and everybody was watching it. And suddenly they said, "Oh, we're going to start charging you $2.99." Okay, they put it like that, and I said to my wife, I said, "You will see, this channel will soon die." Right. Because people are already paying for Sky. Okay, now you now want on top of that for them to pay subscription of $2.99. Okay, every month, not a year, every month. I said people are already squeezed, you know, and that was what happened immediately. They started the subscription, something like that. Many people who have been watching them dropped out.
Right.
Okay. Now it's about psychology of audience. They need to know the psychology of audience. If I was advising them, I would have started as 99p.
Right.
See?
Right.
You know, you just start small. 99p.
Simple set. Right.
People will say it's nothing. Once they get used to paying 99p, hey, you gradually you scale up.
Ola, we're into our last 5 minutes. I got a couple of questions.
Okay.
Around a little bit.
Okay.
Get a couple of things I wanted to ask you in our last few minutes. So first of all, you know, as someone originally from Africa, you've been a scholar across multiple continents. You've worked across multiple continents, and you know, you're obviously an expert in journalism, diaspora, trauma, these different things. I wanted to ask you if you had any advice for either early career scholars working in your fields, or more specifically, perhaps African scholars, as you've highlighted that there's a lot of opportunity out there and there's still a gap. You know, if you had any specific advice or guidance for any African scholars who are looking to, you know, to follow your lead really, and to move out of Africa, or to focus on the African diaspora from within Africa?
Yeah, I would say to anybody who wants to either do PhD or after doing PhD who are looking for to make a mark, that they should be bold. Because I had to take a bold step to actually chart this terrain. Because it's very easy for you to say, oh, everybody is doing this, let me just follow the crowd. Okay? And your voice will be lost among the crowd. But I didn't want my own voice to be lost. So I said, I'm going to be different. You see, even when somebody said to me that it's going to be an academic suicide, I still accepted. I said, oh, let me see how it ends. And see?
How wrong they were.
They were wrong. Yes, you're quite right. You see? So people have to be bold in what they want to do. You know, when they are bold, then they can begin to see and say, look at their environment, where they are, and then begin to, because you need to relate your work to your environment, you see. And that's why I say to people, why study something so far away from you when you have around you here? You know, if you have relocated from Nigeria to South Africa, why continue to study Nigeria? Study South Africa. People are there, Nigerians in South Africa or something like that, you see. So, and exchange ideas, interact with people. Then there's what we call collaboration. They need to collaborate more, sleep on. And then that will help to shape it, because we are still learning. I'm still learning too myself, even how to do good research. You know, doing excellent research is not easy. It's just like being a farmer. You can't say, okay, I tilled the ground last year and produced 2 tons of grain, and this year I won't till the ground and I still want 2 tons of grain. You still have to till the ground. so, and then you continue to learn and do it better and things like that. So I'm still learning. There are so many things I'm saying, oh, I wish I knew this like 5 years ago. You know, but now I know. So, and they say repetitive. There are some of things that are repetitive, which you just say, okay, you have to do it better. How to do research is different from writing, and then they have to understand a different thing. Research process is different from research writing, but people confuse it. They just go into the writing bit, and then, you know, so again, there's a lot, you know, cross-fertilization that can take place, you know, for a young person. Find somebody that you look up to, contact them, let them mentor you, you know, and then learn. Because when I was young in the career too, you know, I had a mentor, and, you know, and I take it in good faith. When they even rubbish my work, you don't have to get scared of, you know, kind of go into your shell. You just take it in good faith. It's okay, fine. You know, of course, English is not my mother tongue. So when I still write, people know that this is not a native English speaker or writer. And that's not a bad thing, because you put in your inflection and things like that. We like, you know, as African, we like to use big grammar when we write, you know, and when you listen to it. So, but, you know, nowadays people use simple English, you know, and you know, just make sure that people, you know, understand and you communicate. So you learn a lot across the way, and then, you know, collaborate, be mentored. That's what I would say.
Well, thank you very much. And that leads me actually to my final question. You've mentioned mentors and things there, and learning through experience. I just wanted to ask you, who were your greatest influences, or who are your greatest influences? Are there any people who've influenced your scholarship or your decisions in life? Anyone you'd like to shout out, or or who we should go and, you know, look into? Any historical figures, or just people who are important in your own life?
Well, there are many people, you know, when you look at it, okay, reading in those days in the 80s and things like that, you know, you have some big names, you know, of course, again, they are all Western scholars, you know, we like to quote McLuhan, you know, something like that, McQuail, you know, things like that, you know. And then, of course, you know, looking at African studies that I didn't, you know, pay attention to, I'm talking of African literature, Chinua Achebe, Wole Soyinka, people like that, you know. All of those things, you know, they add to the scholarship, help you to be able to say, if they've aspired and done so well, I can also do likewise. It's the point. Reading them, looking at how they do stuff and things like that. So they kind of build up, you know, the work that you do. So it's very important to bear that in mind. And then you also have outside the academia, you know, how to have people who can encourage you as well, because, you know, if you are doing something that maybe even your family do not appreciate, because sometimes people don't understand the life of an academic, because you know it's an isolated life basically. You know, you just lock yourself up for 8-9 hours, and people want your attention, especially if you have children. They say, "Daddy, come and play with me." They say, "Oh, just give me another 5 minutes." You know, it can it can be very traumatic for both parties. You know, so again, you need that kind of support system around you for them to be able to know exactly what we are doing. I remember the case of one German PhD student, you know, many years ago, and it was reported in the papers. You know, the guy was supposed to submit their PhD the following day. It's been completed, finalized, and then, you know, they left it on the computer. They went to do whatever. The girlfriend came and mistakenly deleted it, and that was the only copy they had.
Oh, well, that's their fault. the girlfriend's fault, but also like that's thankfully now we have a few technology and would stop. So,
exactly.
That's
exactly.
also, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So, so again, having that kind of support all around is very, very important, for your own well-being as well. We have to look after ourselves. I think we don't do that enough. You should also be able to separate yourself from what you do. You are more than your work. Is the point. So because we can take it so hard, and I know some colleagues, older colleagues, who feel that they can't do any other thing outside the academia and say, but there are other things you can involve in. Like I lead a charity, Shepherd Food Ministries, and it's a charity that is working within the remit of Sustainable Development Goals by United Nations 1 and 2, food and poverty, food and poverty and hunger, and when I'm doing that, people ask me, how do I have time to do social work like that? And I say, well, I just communicate. I say, and that's what I do in the classroom. I talk for a living. So, and then I go to the society, and I'm still talking. So, to me, I don't see any kind of conflict or any kind of extra something. It's just an extension of what I normally do in my day work, and then using to promote, this essential issue that people should not be hungry in the 21st century. I think it's something that we should be quite of like the United Nations rapporteur was saying this morning when John Simpson went to Afghanistan and saw the devastation. They said there's a human catastrophe building up in Afghanistan now. And if intervention is not made today, that we're going to move into 9 million people are facing, famine. 9 million. And 23 more will be finished. So, and that in the 21st century, that shouldn't be happening. It shouldn't be happening. So we have to have life outside of academia to make sure that we are able to engage in all of these things, people around us, and make ourselves relevant. You see, if you can communicate, then communicate. If you can invent something, then invent something that will make people's life better.
Well, I think that's a very admirable work that you're doing, and that's a great time, I think, for us to end as this session has unfortunately come to an end. I want to say thank you to everybody who's joined us today. And Ola, I want to say thank you so much to you. What a fascinating conversation, and I think we'll definitely be having you back on to continue these discussions. And yeah, I've really enjoyed having you on, and I'm very glad that we didn't have any technical issues today. But just as a final statement, I would just like to say, please, everyone, just Google Ola Ogunyemi and just try and find out what's going on online. Do take a look at the Journal of Global Diaspora Media, intellectbooks.com. You can download a free issue, and of course you can submit your own research and find out more what that important journal is doing in the world and what we're trying to achieve through that publication. But Ola, just a last word from you. Would you possibly just tell us the name of your charity and where we can find out more, or the charity you're working with?
Yes, it's called Shepherd Food Ministries. So www.shepherdsfood.org.uk. So it's a Lincoln registered charity, but we work in Nigeria because, what many people may not realize that there are 200 million people in Nigeria, but 70 million go to bed every night without food. Right. There's massive disparity in that country. People might be thinking it's an oil-rich country, but there is so much poverty on the ground. And that's why we are working with smallholder farmers. So we have to buy land in a rural community to work with the farmer, because we discovered that between the farm and the market, 50% of the food is wasted. In the West here, we buy too much and throw away. But over there, actually, 50% perishes on the farm. Why? There are no good roads. There's no processing facility nearby, no electricity. No, I can continue to count, you see the point. So we are actually working with them to preserve more of the food and make sure that they get decent income for them, that they are not cheated out of it and things like that. So that's the project, to be able to help vulnerable people who are actually suffering from food poverty. We give them food support.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for all that you're doing. Thank you for all your hard work on the journal. And thank you for joining me today. Thanks to everyone in the audience too. We'll be back with In Conversation at the same time on Wednesday. So that is 1 p.m. EST over here on the East Coast in America, which will be 6 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Now the clocks have gone back, and you can adjust that for wherever else you are. We will be posting who our guest is today, but for now it remains a secret and a surprise. But do tune in on Wednesday and keep an eye out on our Instagram feed for further information. Ola, thank you so much again. It's been such a pleasure. I really enjoyed chatting. For anyone else who wants to relive this conversation, it will be available through our Instagram TV channel and on our website for future viewing and for taking notes and all that kind of stuff. Ola, thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Take care of yourself. All the best.